Why are you still waiting? Not asking for a dramatic confession, just a straight truth. You keep promising yourself you'll start, you'll change, you'll be different, and then you don't. That gap between intention and action is where life quietly evaporates. This video is not here to comfort you, it's here to shake you awake. You have time, yes, but only until you spend it. If you want different outcomes, you must change your next moves, not your next thoughts. Procrastination is not a moral deficiency. It is not a sign that you lack grit or that you are a failure. It's a survival strategy that backfires. Your brain is a brilliant survival machine wired to avoid pain and chase pleasure. When a task hints at discomfort, the risk of judgment, the effort of learning, the boring grind of doing real work, your brain reroutes you to something easier. Scrolling, busy work, small wins that feel like progress but aren't. That rerouting feels safe, it feels smart, but it steals your life one later at a time. Here's the first hard truth. Procrastination is avoidance dressed up in good reasons. You tell yourself you'll begin when conditions are perfect, when you feel motivated, when the timing fits. That's seductive. It lets you believe the problem is outside the world. But the problem is inside. It's the voice that whispers, not now, later. And later is a trap, a promise with no arrival time. You must refuse to be seduced by that voice. You need to see procrastination for what it actually is: pain management. The work feels like pain, real or imagined, so you move toward short-term relief. It's not laziness. It's a tiny, repeated choice to avoid a feeling. Once you name it, you can outsmart it. Name the enemy, and it loses its authority. Second truth, time is the one resource you cannot replenish. Money comes and goes. Energy fluctuates. Opportunities sometimes return. Time never comes back. When you postpone the important, you trade irreplaceable hours for temporary comfort. Imagine the person you will be in 1 year if you keep pushing everything to next. Now, imagine the person you will be if you start today in small, relentless increments. Which future do you prefer? The answer reveals what you really value. Now, let's unpack how your mind tricks you. The simplest explanation involves immediate rewards. Your brain loves dopamine hits, likes, small accomplishments, novelty. Tasks that require sustained attention and delayed gratification don't give quick rewards. So you swap the slow-burning, high-impact tasks for a parade of tiny, easy pleasures. The math is brutal. Dozens of small hits equal the same short-term dopamine as doing one meaningful task, but the long-term payoff is gone. You feel busier, not better. That's why false productivity is so dangerous. You may clean your inbox, rearrange your desk, or read a few articles, and then call it progress. But the work that moves you forward remains untouched. Real progress is usually messy, boring at times, and involves doing things that make your chest tighten with discomfort. If you want the life you envision, you must get comfortable with temporary discomfort. Growth isn't polite, it's often hard and loud. Let's be tactical. The first micro-win is to shrink the entry barrier. When tasks are huge, you stall. The secret is to make the beginning so small it's ridiculous. 5 minutes, 1 sentence, a single phone call. The point is to begin. Your brain will follow action with alignment. Motion creates emotion. You don't wait for motivation. You create it by doing. Pick one thing, a small, specific step, and commit to starting it now. Not after a coffee, not after you clean the kitchen, now. Another tool is redefining your language. Words shape reality. When you say, I should, your brain hears judgment and resistance. When you say, I choose, you shift from victim to agent. Replace I have to with I choose to, and you reclaim your power. This is more than semantics. It rewires your inner narrative. As Earl Nightingale and others argued, you become what you think about most. If your thinking frames tasks as punishments, you will avoid them. Frame them as chosen actions toward a future you value, and they gain meaning. You must also stop confusing urgent with important. Most inbox fires and small tasks scream louder than deep work. But deep work is the engine of meaningful results. Schedule uninterrupted blocks for your most consequential tasks and protect that time like a sacred meeting. Turn off notifications, set a timer, and honor the beginning ritual. Rituals reduce friction. Simple habits, a short pre-work routine, a clear desk, a warm-up question like, what single thing would make today a success, create the mental space to begin. Now listen, fear is often the root of procrastination. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of looking silly, they are all cousins. Fear wants to keep you where you are because the known is safer than the unknown. Your job is to shine a light on the fear and take a tiny step through it. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action taken despite fear. Name the fear out loud. Test it. What is the worst realistic outcome? How likely is it? Most fears fall apart when you examine them. You'll hear whispers from self-help icons sometimes. And yes, there are truths worth stealing. Napoleon Hill said something urgent about belief. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Don't swallow that as a sugar pill. Let it be a challenge. If you consistently imagine a future where you act, your brain will look for evidence to support that story. But imagination alone won't carry you. Belief must be matched with tiny, consistent action. Let's talk about identity. You postpone because part of you protects an identity that doesn't include the person who shows up and does the hard work. Change the identity script. Instead of, I'm someone who procrastinates, say, I'm someone who takes the first step. Identity changes slowly through repeated choices. Each time you act, you cast a vote for the person you want to be. Small actions compound into a new self-image, and that new self will make different choices with less friction. Practicality matters. Your environment either supports your goals or fights them. If your phone is a constant siren, move it. If your workspace signals distraction, redesign it. You don't need a perfect environment, but you do need one that makes the path of least resistance equal to progress. Set up friction for distractions, make them slightly harder, and make good actions easier. Finally, accountability accelerates change. Tell someone what you will do, and you're more likely to do it. Not because of external shame, but because you want to be true to the person who heard you. Create micro deadlines. Publicize small promises. The social cost of failing is a powerful motivator when used constructively. This is your pause, not to feel guilty, but to get honest. What has procrastination cost you already? Opportunities? Energy? Respect for yourself? Now imagine converting those costs into investment, a skill developed, a relationship repaired, the project shipped. The difference is your decision right now. Make it concrete. Choose one tiny action you can do in the next 10 minutes and do it. If you're ready to dismantle the patterns that steal your time, write it below. Tell me one tiny action you will take in the next 10 minutes. Be specific. Name the task, the time, and how you'll start. Your comment isn't a fluff promise. It's a public vote for who you want to become. What one small thing will you start now that your future self will thank you for? Part 2. You think procrastination is a time problem. It's not. It's a meaning and emotion problem. Behind most delays sits a quiet, convincing voice. Fear. Not the cinematic fear that paralyzes you once in a blue moon, but the everyday soft fear that whispers, "What if?" and reroutes you toward anything that feels less threatening. Fear is the elbow that nudges you away from what matters. Your job is to stop being nudged. First, recognize the flavors of fear. There's fear of failure, the loud one that says you'll be judged, exposed, or humiliated. There's fear of success. Yes, it exists. Success changes relationships, demands responsibility, and invites new expectations. There's fear of being ordinary, fear of looking foolish, fear of not being good enough, and the insidious fear of commitment. Each of these casts a long shadow over action. When you name the flavor, you strip it of mystery and reduce its power. Naming is the simplest, most underrated hack. Say it out loud. This is fear of failure. Hearing the words outside your head separates you from the feeling. It's not you are fear, it's fear is happening. That small grammatical shift converts you into an observer with options. Try it right now. Identify one task you've been avoiding and name the fear attached to it. You'll notice how your body relaxes almost immediately. Naming doesn't erase fear, but it makes fear manageable. Next, test the claim. Fear often makes catastrophic predictions. If I try, I'll fail, and everyone will see. Ask for evidence. What specifically will happen? How likely is it? When was the last time that exact catastrophe occurred? Most of the scary scenarios are exaggerations or outright fabrications. Use a short experiment, set a tiny, time-boxed trial, and measure the outcome. The truth rarely matches the drama the fearful voice composes. Reframe the stakes. Our inner dialogue loves binary thinking, either perfect or failure. That's a trap. Rehearse a third option, the imperfect, informative action. I will try, learn, adjust. That simple sentence defeats paralysis because it values information over image. When your identity is tied to being right or impressive, action risks reputation. But when your identity values learning, action becomes the currency of growth. As Dale Carnegie suggested in different words, action dissolves fear. It doesn't chase fear away with logic, it replaces fear with experience. You must also interrogate perfectionism. Perfection is stealthy procrastination wearing a charismatic mask. It raises the bar to a point where starting equals guaranteed failure, so you don't start at all. If perfectionism is your stopper, adopt a ship early, refine often approach. Give yourself permission to be bad at the beginning. The brilliant work rarely appears out of the gate. It emerges from iterations. Real creators ship flawed versions and then improve. That's how mastery happens. Now, the mechanics of breaking the inner loop. Start with micro experiments. Pick one avoided task and commit to a 5 to 10 minute test. That's it. If you don't proceed after 10 minutes, you're free to stop. In most cases, your body and mind will continue. Motion creates motivation. The 5-minute test is a surgical strike against the inertia that builds when a task seems monolithic. Follow that with evidence mapping. Keep a short log. Task, fear named, what you did for 5 or 10 minutes, and the actual outcome. Over weeks, you'll build a file of evidence that contradicts your fearful predictions. This file is ammunition. On bad days, flip through it and see how often fear lied. Your brain responds to data. Show it patterns of success, even tiny ones, and it will slowly recalibrate what it expects. Use implementation intentions, simple if-then plans that automate behavior. Instead of, I will work on my project, say, if it is 9 a.m., then I will work for 25 minutes on the project. Implementation intentions move you from vague desire to concrete action. They reduce the cognitive load and make starting automatic. Pair them with environmental cues, sitting in a specific chair, opening a specific document, to create reliable triggers. Temptation bundling is another practical lever. Pair a habit you've been avoiding with a reward you actually enjoy. Only allow yourself the reward while doing the important work. For example, listen to your favorite podcast while you do focused, low brain work tasks. Or allow your favorite coffee only at your workstation during deep work. The point is to rewire pleasure pathways so that the uncomfortable task gains an associated reward. Expose yourself to discomfort deliberately. The brain learns from experience. If you avoid discomfort, it assumes it's unbearable. If you face mild discomfort repeatedly, it builds tolerance. Set up short exposures, a 5-minute cold shower for resilience, a 2-minute speech to a small group to practice public action, a short coding sprint with no edits allowed. These micro-exposures expand your tolerance and shrink fear's territory. Cognitive reframing matters. Ask different questions. Instead of, "What if I fail?" ask, "What will I learn?" Instead of, "What if they judge me?" ask, "What if this work helps one person?" These questions change the emotional weight of the moment. Shift from self-centered outcomes to contribution-centered outcomes, and suddenly the ego's threats lose their grip. Don't forget identity work. You procrastinate partly because a part of you prefers the old identity. Change the narrative. Start calling yourself by the name of your aspirational self. I am the kind of person who begins. Speak that aloud and back it with micro-actions. Identity follows behavior. Each small step is a vote. Cast them deliberately. Social mechanics accelerate change. Create accountability that isn't shaming. Choose someone who will ask kindly but insistently about your progress. Publicize a small promise and report back. Human beings are wired to keep word to those we respect. Use that to your advantage. Make the promise tiny, a 15-minute check-in, so it's easy to keep. Then, the habit of keeping promises compounds into self-trust. Lastly, cultivate compassion. You won't break deep patterns with brutality. Scolding yourself fuels the avoidance loop. Instead, be curious about your resistance. Ask, what is this trying to protect? Listen. Often, beneath the fear, there's a legitimate human need: safety, approval, competence. Meet that need with a small, loving action, a realistic plan, a micro-schedule, a break. Compassion and discipline aren't opposites, they're partners. You hold yourself accountable and you treat yourself with respect. Here's a concrete sequence to use today. Pick a task you've been avoiding. Name the fear in one sentence, set a 5-minute timer, do the micro-action, log the outcome, and share the result in a sentence with someone who cares. Repeat this daily for a week. The pattern will erode the story of helplessness and replace it with evidence of mastery. I'll leave you with a final thought from the old voices who still matter. Belief fuels action, but action builds belief. Napoleon Hill and others talked about desire and clarity. Desire without action is daydreaming. Action without desire is unsustainable. The sweet spot is choosing a desire worth discomfort and then designing tiny, repeatable systems to pursue it. Write in the comments. Name one fear that stopped you and describe the 5-minute experiment you'll run on that fear in the next hour. Be specific. What will you do, where, and how will you know you've started? Your comment is your first public vote toward becoming someone who moves first and edits later. What fear will you face right now? Procrastination doesn't live in a vacuum. It spreads. It corrodes trust. The trust you have in others and the trust you have in yourself. Every postponed promise is a small fracture in your credibility. People notice patterns long before you do. A missed deadline, a half-finished commitment, a faded follow-through. These are not small things. They are the currency of relationships and careers. When you habitually delay, you become unreliable to others, and more importantly, unreliable to yourself. Think about that. The person who can't keep small promises loses access to big opportunities.
Why would someone hand you a leadership role, a partnership, or a key responsibility if your track record says later? Reputation compounds. So does its opposite, reputation decay. Each "I'll do it next" is a deposit into the bank of excuses. At some point, the account is bankrupt, and doors that could have opened stay closed. That's what procrastination actually costs. Not just time, but lost credibility and diminished access to the future. Now, consider the internal toll. Procrastination breeds shame and guilt, and those feelings are stealthy productivity killers. You know the pattern. You put off the task, then you feel bad about it, and feeling bad drains your energy for other tasks. The guilt then fuels more avoidance. It's a self-reinforcing loop where every delay multiplies the psychological weight of what you haven't done. Over time, that weight makes the task feel heavier than it actually is. The cycle becomes a prison. This is also how identity erodes. You begin to think of yourself as someone who postpones, who can't be counted on, who always needs one more push to start. That identity will seek confirmation. Humans are expert pattern makers. If you tell yourself a story often enough, you start living it. Breaking that story requires deliberate, visible proof that you are someone different. You need a dossier of actions that contradict the narrative of avoidance. That dossier is built from moments of showing up, consistent, visible, non-glamorous effort. The social consequences reach further. In relationships, procrastination is a slow erosion of intimacy. If you continually defer important conversations, decisions, or even small acts of care, partners and friends internalize that deferral as lack of commitment. They interpret delay as disinterest. Career-wise, procrastination limits promotions, stalls projects, and reduces influence. The people who move faster and ship earlier set the agenda, not the ones who wait for perfect conditions. The world rewards momentum. Financially, the cost is real. Opportunities have timing, deals expire, markets shift, and competitors move. A single delayed action could mean missing a contract, a client, or a market window. Compound that over months and years, and the lost revenue and lost lessons add up. You can quantify the cost of procrastination if you track it. How many projects didn't ship? How many pitches never happened? How many emails never sent that could have turned into paid work? Numbers are clarifying. They force you to see procrastination in black and white, not as an abstract character flaw. But the invisible price is often the worst, what it does to your inner alignment. When you delay the work that matters, you live dissonantly. Your values say produce, create, contribute, but your behaviors say avoid. That gap creates cognitive dissonance, a chronic hollowing of meaning. You wake up with the sense that you aren't living up to yourself. That emptiness leaches into mood, relationships, and health. The antidote is simple and painful. Do the things that align with your values even when you don't feel like it. That alignment rebuilds integrity, the single most direct route to self-respect. Let's be candid. Procrastination sells you a lie. It promises safety in staying small. But safety is not the same as flourishing. Safety is a shallow pond where potential goes to stagnate. Flourishing requires risk. It requires showing up imperfectly and learning on the move. People who live meaningful lives are not those who never feared. They are the ones who acted despite fear. They made the calls, sent the emails, asked the questions. They started. The payoff is not only external success, but also the inner calm that comes from knowing you did what you could with the time you had.
You're also robbing your future self with a specific cruelty. Procrastination creates urgency that could have been avoided. When you cram, you produce lower quality work under stress. You miss the opportunity to iterate, to learn from feedback, and to refine. Contracts signed in panic rarely lead to long-term value. The better path is steady, intentional progress, a rehearsal that leads to mastery. It's a boring truth. Less frantic, more focused work wins. Let's dig into the mechanics of how small delays become permanent failures. It's a compounding effect. One skipped day is easy to recover. 2 skipped days establish a pattern. A week becomes a habit. Habits are the invisible architecture of your life. If you habitually choose immediate comfort over future value, your identity reshapes to match that pattern. The antidote is to catch the pattern early and interrupt it with deliberate actions that are small enough to do even when your motivation is low. Here's a field-tested intervention. Convert vague intentions into public micro-promises. Vague, I'll write my book. Micro-promise, I will write 300 words at 8 p.m. in the blue notebook for 20 minutes and send a 1-sentence status to Alex. The micro-promise creates immediate accountability and a low-friction entry. When you make it public, even to one person, you increase the cost of not starting. Social leverage is not shame, it's a tool for honoring your word. Another lever is the ritualization of beginnings. Create a ritual that signals the start of focused work. A specific playlist, a breathing exercise, brewing a single cup of coffee, or a 5-minute planning page. Rituals reduce decision fatigue. They remove the question, should I start, and replace it with, begin the ritual. A ritual is a pre-commitment device. It automates the transition from indecision to action. You also need clear metrics for progress. Vague goals create wandering. Specific metrics create direction. Instead of work on my business, say complete the landing page draft and test the headline by Friday. Break the mountain into measurable rocks. Measure output, not just effort. Track the metrics publicly if that helps. Momentum follows clarity. Now, design your environment to favor beginnings and punish distractions. If your phone is a siren, put it in another room. If notifications are a trap, mute them. Create a work-only zone. Physical cues send signals to your brain. This place equals work, this time equals focus. If you can't control your entire environment, control what you can. Small friction for distractions, low friction for progress. Finally, reclaim the narrative of time. Stop romanticizing someday. Someday rarely arrives. Replace it with dates and micro-commitments. Say, I will launch the prototype by July 10th, rather than someday next year. Specificity creates pressure in a useful way. It forces choices and allocates time. When you assign dates, you convert intention into schedule. This is not about perfection. It's about integrity and leverage. Integrity is the habit of keeping promises, especially small ones. Leverage is realizing that a few hours of focused work this week will change your trajectory more than months of busy work. Combine both, and you create unstoppable momentum. So here's the provocation. Imagine your life 5 years from now if you keep doing what you've been doing. Now, imagine what changes if you swap a single hour a day of shallow busyness for 1 hour of deliberate creation. Which future feels truer to who you can be? The answer should alarm you and excite you at the same time. Write in the comments now. Name one concrete thing you've postponed that's eroding your reputation or relationships, and describe one tiny public promise you'll make today to begin fixing it. Be specific. What exactly will you do, when, and who will you tell? Your comment is not a small act. It's a declaration that you will no longer let next become never. What postponed promise are you finally going to keep? This is where the rubber meets the road. Theory inspires, but systems produce results. If you want to beat procrastination for good, you need practical, repeatable routines that make starting easier and stopping harder. The strategies I give you now are not philosophy, they're scaffolding. Use them to build motion, momentum, and muscle memory. Don't edit them to death. Pick a few, apply them, and refine as you go. Real change is ugly at first. That's fine. Ugly actions still move you forward. Start with one iron rule.
reduce the friction to begin and increase the friction for distractions. To abstract, concrete example, make your work environment a launchpad. Put the single tool you need for your main project in the only place you open in the morning. If writing is your work, keep your laptop lid closed until you sit at your desk, and keep a physical notebook with the opening sentence ready. If calls are your job, place the headset in a visible spot. The fewer the steps between intention and first motion, the more likely you will act. Adopt micro starts as your default tactic. The 5-minute rule is not a trick, it's tactical neuroscience. Set a timer for 5 minutes and say, "I'll do this for 5 minutes." Often, inertia breaks and you'll go longer. If you don't, you still did 5 minutes. That small win is the seed of a habit. Make a list of tasks you've been avoiding and assign each a 5-minute microstart. That list becomes your emergency toolkit for low-energy times. Use time blocking like a pro. Block real, named time on your calendar for the work that matters, not vague work time, but outline chapter, client proposal draft, research for ad campaign. Treat those blocks as non-negotiable appointments with your future self. Protect them. Close tabs, silence notifications, and put your phone out of reach. When you respect the block, your brain learns that certain hours are sacred. Ritualize the beginning of the block. A 30-second breathing exercise, a single sentence written, or a one-line focus question written at the top of the page. Rituals make starting automatic. Pair time blocking with the Pomodoro method, but adapt it. Work 25 minutes, rest 5, then repeat. But don't be rigid. Some tasks demand longer flow. For deep work, try 90-minute blocks followed by a 20 to 30-minute break. Experiment and record what duration yields your best concentration. The key is scheduled intensity followed by scheduled recovery. No heroics, no sprinting all day, controlled, repeatable power sessions. Design your environment for flow. Remove decision points. Put the tools you need within reach and bury the tools of distraction. If social feeds are a problem, use website blockers during focus blocks. If notifications tempt you, use airplane mode for your phone or a separate device for deep work. Move social apps to a folder 2 swipes away. Create friction for the low-value behaviors and smooth the path for the high-value ones. Create pre-commitment devices. Put real stakes on your promises. Want to finish a draft? Schedule a public read of the draft with a friend. Want to run 3 times a week? Prepay for a small coaching session tied to those runs. Want to finish a course? Buy the certificate exam and set the test date. When you attach costs, social, financial, or reputational, to not acting, your present self has to negotiate with consequences. Humans hate unnecessary losses. Use that to your advantage. Craft implementation intentions, precise if-then scripts that automate starting. Examples you can steal and use now. If it is 8 a.m., then I will open a new document and write 300 words. If my calendar shows deep work, then I will set my phone in the other room and start the timer for 50 minutes. If it is Monday, then I will spend 15 minutes on client outreach at 10 a.m. Write your own and pin them where you'll read them each morning. These aren't motivational quotes, they're behavioral contracts. Leverage temptation bundling. Attach something you enjoy to the action you avoid. Only allow yourself the binge podcast while you perform a low-brain task, or allow your special coffee only at the work table during a focus session. The goal is to marry immediate pleasure to delayed value tasks so your brain reassigns desirability.
Track progress publicly. Habit trackers work because they turn private choices into visible streaks. Use a simple calendar and mark days when you completed your micro action. Watch the streak grow. Break one day and restart. Guilt is not the point, momentum is. Share milestones with someone who supports your growth. The public record is gentle pressure and a mirror of your integrity. Use the pre-mortem technique to avoid future procrastination. Before you start a big project, imagine it failed and write down all the reasons it failed. Likely causes will include procrastination, unclear goals, poor scope, distraction. Once you list them, build countermeasures against each. If "I'll get distracted by email" is on the list, schedule email only in 2 short windows. If "I'll stall on the outline," commit to an outline template and a 30-minute mapping session. Pre-mortems are proactive problem finding. They reduce the surprises that derail you. Tame perfectionism with iteration rules. Define what good enough to ship means for different progress milestones. For example, first draft equals 40% quality, second draft equals 70%, final equals 90%. Give yourself permission to operate at each stage with realistic standards. Publish imperfect work and schedule specific rounds of revision. Iteration beats paralysis. Recover from lapses with a repair ritual. You will miss a day. You will skip a block. The question is how you respond. Create a short repair ritual. Note what happened without judgment. Plan a one-step recovery. Example, "I will do a 25-minute session tonight," and publicly acknowledge the restart. Trading shame for action shortens the time to rebound. Be strategic about willpower. Willpower is finite. Don't schedule every hard thing in one day. Prioritize. Use your high energy windows for the hardest work. Use smaller wins in low energy windows. Respect your limits, but expand them gradually with deliberate exposure to discomfort. Short cold showers, brief public speaking exercises, or timed challenges that build tolerance. Use language as a lever. Replace "I'll try" with "I will." Replace "I'll do it later" with "I'll do it next at 6 p.m. Commitments harden when spoken plainly. Keep promises to yourself in small increments. Promises are votes for the person you aim to be. Make use of a tiny daily dashboard. 3 things: 1 outcome, 1 process, 1 micro action. Example, outcome, complete chapter 2. Process, write for 50 minutes. Micro action, open a blank document and write first sentence. This reduces overwhelm by separating the result, the method, and the immediate action. Finally, remember the compound effect. Small actions repeated consistently outpace occasional heroic bursts. A single hour of focused work each day adds up to enormous progress over months and years. Let habit design do the heavy lifting. Your identity will follow the small, consistent choices you make. Keep showing up. Now it's time to act. Pick one system from this part: implementation intentions, time blocking, pre-commitment, or temptation bundling, and apply it today. Don't overcomplicate. Choose one micro action, schedule it, and protect that time. Write in the comments, which system will you try next, exactly how you'll implement it, and when you'll start. Be specific. Name the system, the micro action, the time, and who you'll tell it about. Your comment is a tactical commitment. What system will you use to break the pattern of next and make starting automatic? Part 5. This is the closing door and the open road. You've seen the anatomy of procrastination, you've practiced the hacks, you've felt how delay corrodes trust and opportunity. Now the challenge is simple and brutal. Turn these tactics into the architecture of your life. Systems win when emotions fade. Habits carry you when willpower is low. Identity sticks when it's built from unconsequential but consistent choices. If you want a life that matches your ambition, you must design the scaffolding that survives the days you don't feel like it. Begin with a clear North Star. When your goal is foggy, everything that isn't urgent becomes an excuse. Decide, right now, not on some vague dream, but on a concrete target that scares and excites you at the same time. Not be healthier. That's nothing. Choose build a habit of 30 minutes of concentrated work on my project every weekday at 7 a.m. Or finish the first draft of the book by September 15th. Specificity matters because it gives your brain a real task to plan around. Once you have that North Star, reverse engineer the path. What tiny steps will get you there? Break the path into daily micro actions you can start even when your energy dips. Next, institutionalize your rituals. A ritual is not a luxury, it's a short circuit from indecision to action. Create a pre-work sequence that tells your brain the moment to begin. A breath, a single sentence, a cup of the same tea, a 2-minute review of the day's 3 priorities. Do the ritual even when you don't feel like it. Over time, the ritual becomes the signal that moves you from autopilot avoidance to engaged action. This is how identity changes. Ritual, repetition, then recognition. You notice you've become someone who starts. Leverage the compound effect with ruthless patience. A single day of focused effort won't transform your life. A year of daily micro-commitments will. Think in terms of months and years, not dramatic overnight turns. Be patient with the process and merciless with your pattern of excuses. Keep the streaks. Protect the small wins. The person you will be in 12 months is a direct function of what you do this week, not of the motivation you hope to feel next. Make accountability elegant. It doesn't have to be public grandstanding. Find a partner, a small group, or a single person who will hear your micro promises and check in. Keep the promises tiny so you win them often. Every kept promise is a vote for your future self. Every broken promise is evidence that the old story still holds. Choose integrity. Show up. If you miss, repair swiftly and without self-castigation. The repair is the lesson. How fast can you course correct? Fast repairs salvage momentum. Guard your energy like it's your capital. Your best work requires clarity, focus, and a baseline of physical energy. Sleep, movement, and nutrition are not optional if you want high-level performance. Schedule your hardest tasks in your peak energy windows. Use low energy time to clear smaller chores that still matter. Don't scatter your willpower on 100 tiny fights. Conserve it for the high leverage battles. And when you win those battles, celebrate, not with a week off, but with a short, meaningful reward that keeps the rhythm. Practice fierce kindness. You will stumble. The voice that beats you up after a lapse is an ally of procrastination. It keeps you in the loop of shame, and shame fuels more delay. When you fail to start, be curious instead. What happened? What did you avoid? What small adjustment will you make next? Ask the question and act. Compassion speeds recovery. Harshness lengthens it. Combine compassion with accountability, and you'll move faster than either alone. Use future self-visualization as a tactical tool, not a fluffy exercise. Spend 5 minutes each morning vividly imagining the person you want to be, what they have done, how they feel, who they've helped. Let that vision anchor your micro actions. Napoleon Hill and others argued that sustained mental images pull you toward outcomes. That's not magic, it's cognitive alignment. Your behavior will start looking for evidence to validate that internal picture. Feed it with action.
Remember, the point is not to eliminate discomfort, it's to choose discomfort with purpose. Resistance will always be present when you attempt meaningful work. The trick is to reframe discomfort as the price of growth rather than proof that you're failing. When the chest tightens, take a breath, gate and automate ruthlessly where it makes sense. Not every task needs your personal touch. Free your cognitive bandwidth for the work only you can do. Use templates, checklists, and systems to remove decision-making friction. The fewer the decisions, the lower the resistance to start. Build frameworks so your brain can operate on default rather than constant negotiation. Keep a visible scoreboard, a simple habit tracker, a whiteboard with weekly goals, a tiny spreadsheet, whatever shows progress in plain sight. What gets measured grows. The scoreboard turns abstract effort into concrete evidence. It also makes it easier to analyze what's working and what's not. Iterate quickly. If something isn't moving the needle, drop it. Replace it with an experiment that could. Now, let's bring it home with a clean, repeatable protocol you can use today and every day after. Decide on one meaningful outcome for the quarter, specific and measurable. Break it into weekly milestones. Each evening, pick the single micro action for the next morning that will nudge the milestone forward. Create a morning ritual of 3 minutes that starts the work: a breath, a sentence, a focused timer. Do the micro action for 5 minutes, keep going if momentum builds. Log the action on your scoreboard and share one line of progress with your accountability partner. Repair quickly if you miss, and then repeat the sequence. That protocol converts foggy aspiration into concrete daily momentum. It's boring, simple, and devastatingly effective. Finally, imagine your legacy with blunt clarity. What do you want people to say about you when they look back? Will they remember a life of nearlies and laters, full of plans and shrinking possibilities? Or will they remember someone who started, iterated, shipped, and improved the world bit by bit? Legacy isn't forged by grand reveals. It's built by countless small acts of showing up. Choose the latter. Choose the person who finishes. Write in the comments, what is the single quarterly outcome you will commit to right now, and what's the micro action you will do tomorrow morning? Exact time, exact place, exact step. Be specific. Your comment is a contract with your future self and a beacon for those who will follow. What will you start doing next that will change the story of who you become? If you found this useful, subscribe and like. It helps more people choose action over waiting.